constantly shifting through the time-space continuum, Metron's three disciples observe the universe from the Mobius Couch.
I'm on tonight. You know my hips don't lie, and I'm starting to feel it's right. All the attraction, the tension. Don't you see, baby? This is the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your three hosts oversee the world of comic books. And that's it. Just comic books.
And other stuff sometimes. Oh,
like tonight. Today.
We have done anyway, it's all comic related. But welcome to the Mobius Couch. Your three hosts are, of course, me. I'm Alessandro. And I'm joined by Patrick.
Hey, how's it going, Al?
I'm doing swell. Thank you.
You literally never choose me first. You never.
I know it's not. That was weird.
That is not true. I think I mix it up.
No, never.
I mean, you do, but I think it's 9 out of 10.
Okay. Well, now let's make it more of a 50-50 step.
Yeah, rectify that.
Yeah. Also joining us is Joe.
Hello, everybody. Hey, hello, Patrick. Hello, Alessandro.
Hey, everyone.
I'm excited, guys. I'm excited for this.
So this is a first for the Mobius Couch. So of course, our three loyal listeners will know that we mostly do American comic books and comic book based media, TV.
Yeah.
But today we're doing our first manga, our first Japanese comic, and that is, of course, Akira, Katsuhiro Otomo's famous 1980s comic. It created... Shakira. Love it. I'm not even mad. I love that so much. Shakira. Oh, that's wonderful. I don't mind being interrupted by that at all. That only
well,
makes
you
me
said
happy.
Akira, so I had to. I worked on that for far too long.
I'm sorry. I need to repronounce that to make more sense. We're going to talk Akira. Oh, these pages don't lie. I love this comic. It was wonderful. For those who maybe don't know yet, although you should read the comic before listening to this. So Akira is a large, thick 6-volume series. So this first episode is only going to be the first 2 volumes. And then we're going to do more volumes as we go on. So this is just the beginning. But yeah, so let's do a little bit of background. I guess, although if you listen to this podcast, you probably already know what Shakira is. But for those who don't, this was a comic that ran from 1982 to 1990, written by Katsuhiro Otomo. It basically, this along with Blade Runner pretty much created cyberpunk, like that whole aesthetic was those two things. Akira also was pretty central to making manga known in the US and popular in the US. Like its effect on other Japanese comics and on media and on US comics and media is uncountable. It's one of the most influential comics ever written in history. And that's what we're going to do. And generally it's sci-fi. It's cyberpunk sci-fi, telekinetic powers, dystopic, hyper-industrial future. All that stuff. Anything else you all want to add?
Katsuhiro both wrote and he drew all of this, right? He drew
every single page.
But that's for manga. That's pretty normal.
That's true. Yeah.
Writes and draws it. Yeah.
But there's a lot of pages out.
But it's so
he
much.
drew every single page. Yeah. And the detail, I mean, of course we'll get into it, but the detail in some of the throwaway panels, it's just here's a scene and now moving on. It's there's rubble and lines and buildings and windows and they're just densely packed images. And it's just a random panel on a random page, so the amount of work that he put in was just amazing.
Yeah, and listeners, we're going to do kind of our usual thing where we talk about the narrative and go through what's happening in the books, but there's probably, just forewarning, going to be a lot of tangents throughout all these episodes because we're probably it's going to happen.
We have a running list of the things that we've been wanting to cover on this podcast since we started it. And this has always been one of the ones that I'm let's read that. But it's 6 giant volumes and I had no idea how we would tackle it. Let alone you guys hadn't even read it before. So it was kind of me pushing for something that you hadn't had any previous experience with. Not that you're unwilling to read it, of course, but you know what I mean? Like, there's just like this thing of like, well, it's kind of huge, gigantic. Like, how would we do it? I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, when Al took time off over the summertime and went away, and we're like, hey, we're having an extended break. And Al said, why don't we read Akira? And I was like, yes. Like, I was like, finally.
All, I did clarify. I was in Italy working and seeing family. Like, when you say I went, it sounds like I was in rehab or some shit. I was abroad.
What's wrong? You can't have an extended break from the show.
Just the way you sounded seemed very like covert. Like he went away.
You are. I mean,
he went away for a bit.
We know why he was in. We know why you. We know why you went where you went.
Listeners to know that where I don't want them to think like, wow, this guy has problems. He went away.
I mean, you do. So why
do
not Also, I had this like I didn't start reading it until I don't know a couple weeks ago, or rather a week ago maybe. So I'm already on like middle of 5 and almost done. But we're only covering 1 and 2 tonight. But the whole time Patrick's reading it and you're starting to read it, you're just like. Patrick would just text us and be like, this is so awesome, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just wanted to scream at my phone and text me, I know! You know, like, I know! I've been trying to say this for years. But it's so good. I have 0 bad things to say about this comic, so it's just going to be glowing rants and ravings from me the whole time. But
I don't.
So
I do have I have a few bad things, but I mean, like half
Never.
a percent.
Never.
Half of 1%. But so we usually start with overall takes, but I think we all 3 love it. So I don't know if we want to do it. I mean, I enjoyed it. I don't know what else to add to overall take. It's incredible. You should read it if you're at all interested in comics and manga. Like, definitely read this if you haven't.
I think the only thing I want to say is just because like we've covered older stuff lately. We've done Avengers Forever and JLA, and we talk about how. I feel like my big defense of those 2 runs was that you had to visualize it through the lens of like the 90s to like understand it. And this Akira is just one of those things that's like really timeless because I had never read it. I watched the movie when I was a kid, didn't understand it. I knew it was about psychic kids, couldn't really remember details about it. And like once I picked up the first volume, I binged all 6 volumes within about 3 days, I think. And then I came back to reread it. But I mean, it is like the pacing is like it was a page turner.
Yeah,
so it's just interesting how there's like some stories that are like very significant for a certain period of time, and then they just kind of like fall out of favor. And there's stuff like this where I just can't ever imagine this not resonating with whoever's reading it at whatever point.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get into this as we go, but I think what helps is the thematic content is just, it's like hyper-industrialism, youth in revolt, tech gone haywire. Like these are all things that we've been dealing with since the 50s to now. Like they're pretty timeless themes that, we haven't as a culture seem to age out of, certainly. But
that's true.
It's all pretty timeless stuff.
Yeah, and the lower class or like the people against the government's not a new idea or old idea either at this point, kind of thing. So
yeah, it's kind of interesting because in preparation for this, like I was reading up on Otomo interviews and his writing style and leading up to like the conception and production of Akira. And it's funny because this is such an influential comic. Like so much has been dissected and written about it, like every little symbolism and thematic things. But then in a lot of the artist interviews, like he basically just says like, I was just kind of writing it. Like when I was a teenager, we'd ride motorcycles and had a lot of fun. And I was just kind of doing that, And so it's just funny how not to say that content isn't in the comic, but looking back on it, he
wasn't at least at the very least consciously writing some of those themes into it. Like maybe he was just like subconsciously putting that into the book, and it's there for you to
it's just
dissect.
Interesting to see, like from his point of view, it was just kind of like I thought this was a cool thing to put, And then, but we have like 30 years of
that sounds like something I would say
and academic stuff on it. So that's kind of interesting, and but not to say that isn't in the comic. I just mean, but the way the artist puts it is more of like an organic, like I think this kind of looks cool right here. And he was even talking about, because one of the iconic visual symbols is Kaneda's motorcycle, the red future cycle. And even Otomo was saying like, every panel I drew different because I had no fucking idea what really I was doing. It looked kind of cool, but he was like, if you look closely, like the first volume, it looks like this. Second volume, it has the, he was just kind of like, I was day by day just taking it like that.
Which is wild, is like, that's like wild. Because I read that, I got the whole hardcover 6 issues and it came with that art book and it's got a big picture of Kaneda's motorcycle and it's got little quotes for him and it says he's like, I have no idea what this bike looks like. I drew it differently every time I drew it. And it's like that, it's such a mind fuck that it's like it's one of the most iconic looking. It's like
I think the movie lends to its iconic
that might
feeling
be true,
though, because the movie is
the movie
like obviously drawn a specific way and they figured it out by that. Like kind of thing. But like in the book itself, it is different and kind of morphs a little.
It's wild how just like, I don't know. I just wanted to, it always blows my mind when you see a work of art like this. And it's like, this all just started out as this like random ideas inside one dude's brain. And he was able to give it form in this world. And then it's gone on and taken on a life of its own where people have been dissecting themes that he didn't even know like mean to put into the book 30 years later. And then you have the people who animated it and the animated movie is why it's probably why I know about it,
which he directs,
which is also next, which is also like next level though. Like the animation.
The movie up is
like 40 years later. How old is that movie?
Well, but that's the movie nuts. Is so
mid-80s, like 35 years.
Just a genius because so apart from like the 6 years or 8 years he wrote this comic, in '88 or whatever, he's just like, I guess I'll direct the movie too. And he directs like one of the most influential movies.
And if someone else had done it, it wouldn't have been good at all. You know what I mean? Like, and the changes from the movie, and we'll highlight that probably throughout every discussion of this that we do. But like, there's characters in the books that are like huge characters, and they go on for like 2 or 3 volumes, and then maybe die later or whatever. Something becomes of them. And in the movie, they're there for like 5 seconds and then they're like dead, or they're one of the people running by on the street and they're like get blown up and you're like, that was that guy in this book. He's huge, like kind of thing. And like, I mean, even some of the main characters aren't there as much, but I mean, because you have to truncate it for time. Like there's too much content in the
the movie is really interesting because again, it's a giant 6-volume thing he wrote over 10 years and he just makes like a tight 2-hour movie.
Yeah,
and it's
2 hours was long for back then, especially for an anime, though. Kind of
nowadays,
like back in the '80s, if you went over an hour and a half, people were like, "Are you insane?" And it's like 2 hours and 15 or something like that. Like that's very long for a movie.
Yeah, I mean now 2.5 is standard, but
but especially for an animated film, like to break the hour and a half and go into like a further, like that was like never done.
Yeah. We could do a whole podcast just comparing the comic and movie because there's some interesting differences, even just like tonally between the comic and the movie that I think are kind of interesting, especially given that he directed the movie like basically at the end when he'd already written the whole comic. So I don't know. There's a lot to talk about, kind of like why he might have made some choices,
different choices,
some things. Before we begin, a quick tangent about me, just because I like to make things about me, and it's somewhat related to Akira, and you'll understand why when I get to the story. So I saw Akira when I was just a young lad. Shakira. There it is. My main, like, strongest memory of that movie from when I was a kid was, and it's pretty vague, but like either Kaneda or Tetsuo, I don't know who, like standing and like screaming into the sky, Akira, right? That happens in the movie. I just rewatched the movie. That never happens in the movie.
Yeah, no one really. I mean, they scream Tetsuo and Kaneda all the the
Yeah,
they're yelling at each other constantly.
But anyway, so I Mandela affected that. But here's another interesting thing. There was a mid-90s Spielberg movie called Amistad about a slave rebellion on a ship with Jimon Hansu was the slave and Matthew McConaughey was the lawyer. I never saw the movie, but my clearest memory of the trailer was Jimon Hansu in the rain screaming Amistad, right? I saw the movie 2 years ago. That never happens. So for whatever reason, I invent scenes in movies where like the central character just screams the title into the sky, and it never happens in any of these movies. So I don't know what that says about me, but
I don't know. I feel like you need to take like 5 grams of shrooms and explore that thought, because I feel like that's kind of wild.
But so that was my memory of the movie. Also, apart from reading the comic, watch the movie because
that's funny, because I have a memory of Val Kilmer screaming like "Batman Forever" and then like jumping down and fighting, but that doesn't happen. Just the opening of this book, and the movie, but like the opening of this book is spectacular. The explosion is horrifying. You literally watch buildings like tilting over like Lego blocks, from afar, and the explosion is so big and just absorbs the center of a city, and you're just like, oh my god.
Well, but it's not an explosion, right? It's a
psychic wave, like a telekinetic wave.
No, but I mean, it's not. Well, okay, so it's obviously a reference to an atomic bomb, but it's not an atomic bomb explosion. It is a perfect sphere. It's a
it's a black dome. Yeah, and it's amazing. The opening explosion is fantastic.
And the other thing, so again, we're going to talk about this over and over because this comic is aesthetically iconic and like genre defining. But this whole idea of like these crater, like spherical craters and like spheres expanding and contracting is all over sci-fi and anime and everything.
The very first page of the book, I mean, you're in space essentially looking at the explosion from space, and even the clouds are like for like thousands of miles are swirling around the explosion or the sphere. And it's fantastic. Like, it's just so beautiful looking. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was like crazy or just like took me aback, or maybe I think they say in the movie like World War III began, but like they don't say like Leningrad, Moscow, like San Francisco, Los Angeles. Like, they don't like list city, like, because in the book it's like 9 hours later World War III began, and you're like, oh shit, because like basically this happened in the world. What the fuck? Oh no, everyone's launching nukes, and like the idea is like, it's the Cold War. Everyone's scared of nuclear war. So the idea is like Japan exploded, Tokyo exploded, or was decimated. So they were just like, oh shit, it's happening. And all the other countries reacted without thinking, kind of thing. And then that's insane, kind of thing. Like, that's crazy. But the list of cities is huge. And I'm just like, oh God, like it's not, because in the movie it's kind of easy to be like, oh, World War III began, and like you're just like, oh, I guess it was just Tokyo that was affected. But like in the book, it's like right off the bat, they're like, yeah, the whole rest of the world was affected by this one event.
Yeah,
like ripped the world apart.
Everyone died. Like, everyone died. It's such a crazy way to open a story. And I remember, so the way I handled this is I binged all 6 issues or 6 volumes, and I came back and I like read them more slowly. And I think I was reading so fast, like I read the city names, but didn't really give much thought to the fact that all those cities were gone. And it's all of like the biggest cities in the world.
Yeah.
Like, every country's like biggest city is literally obliterated. So like America would just basically be middle of America is like all that's left of it.
I mean, Chicago and Atlanta maybe are the biggest cities after that now.
Maybe.
San Francisco, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., New York, gone.
Boston,
London, Paris,
Beantown. Boston's still there.
Boston.
Yeah, but so okay. I mean, this is. Man, there's so much to say.
I love how they call it the old city and the new city. I love the fact that there's still rubble. Like, they built around where it happened. It's not like they built on top of like ground zero, so to speak. They kind of just
left it. Yeah.
And then, but also there's a subtext of them like hosting the first world, like the Olympic Games since all of this happened. And I was just like, that's insane. Like 30 years later, and you're just getting back to like, I guess we should do normal stuff again, like kind of thing.
Well, but there's a lot that's insane. Also, the fact that they're going to build the stadium on top of where the world's
where it all started
is buried.
Well, that's because that's because the military is using that construction as a ploy to like hide installations and stuff. But
but I just mean it's a strange choice to think that like the 200-meter dash is going to be on top of the grave of the world's strongest psychic. It's weird.
And also, how many bodies are they digging up to make that stadium? A lot.
Yeah. But so to set all right. So thematically, this is a pretty clear parallel to post World War II Japan is what he's setting up here, because obviously atomic bombs were this brand new incomprehensible weapon that wiped out entire cities from nowhere, and Japan is rebuilding out of that post-World War II. So that's a pretty clear parallel to what Otomo's setting up here with the World War III psychic bomb, right? So it's kind of like the world building we're getting into that.
Mm-hmm. The catalyst event is Takashi blowing up Tetsuo's bike, and
why? So Takashi is one of the other psychic boys.
He's an old boy. He's an old boy. He's an old
little boy. He's a little old boy.
He's an old boy.
Why? Unless you guys know for sure that this is revealed in like a later volume, why was he fleeing from the military? Like, why was he fleeing away from the other psychic kids and like his home for the last 30 years?
It's because of the resistance fighters like Ryu and the resistance knowing something. Basically, for as long as they've been rebuilding, there's been a group of people that have like known it wasn't just some accident, or they're like, they don't know what Akira is. They just know the name of it maybe. And then they're trying to figure out what it is. And it's all about like them seeking the truth / also trying to like halt whatever shadow government thing is happening because they don't want it to happen again. So I think they only know that it has something to do with these test subjects, and they're rescuing him in the sense of like, we need to figure this out.
They kind of maybe kidnapped him, and then he was like 3, and then like didn't know what he wanted to do, and was just
to Patrick's point, I think you're right. It's a little bit of like a plot device that is then kind of moved to the side for later thing, because you're right. Like the way Takashi acts in intro scene is kind of not how he interacts with the other Espers and Colonel Zaddy later.
Right. So I think what that mainly is trying to subtly like just to point out is that the drugs had started to wear off, so he was maybe acting differently.
Yeah,
because they're on these drugs that are constantly like actually hindering their powers unbeknownst to them, but also keeping them dependent on the government and the shadow government rather that the colonel's in charge of. And I think part of that is like he had been away for X amount of time, so he had like missed a few pills, sort of thing, capsules, so to speak. So like, I think he was starting to kind of be like, oh, this is better, kind of thing. But maybe it's as subtle as that, like, and maybe like the second he starts taking the pills again, he's like, part of his brain's mollified into thinking that he's where he needs to be.
And plus like Tetsuo enters the picture, like other things happen, and maybe he then recalibrates to like, well, never mind. I better stick with the Espers and help.
Yeah, probably. I think that's part of it.
But I think, Patrick, to your point, I think at this point in time in the beginning, he is genuinely like, all right, the resistance contacted
these people are helping me.
Out.
I need to run with them. Yeah.
I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
So this is a total tangent, but I feel like I won't remember it later on because I don't think we'll be talking about Takashi.
We already had a disclaimer that we're going to go on several tangents.
We've already talked about me and the film Amistad by Steven Spielberg.
So that's cut. That's cut out. We're on that one.
Later on, and I think it's the second volume. Later on, Takashi's in the nursery, and the Colonel Zaddy shows up, and Takashi's like, "I want to watch TV," and the Colonel's like, "You can watch your educational programs," and then Takashi goes, "I want to watch movies about airplanes." And then he goes, and dog fighting. He wants to watch movies about dog fighting. What the fuck is wrong with
Patrick?
No.
A dog fight is an aerial
dog
fight.
Fighting.
It's a military term. It's an aerial fight is a dog fight.
I was like, what the fuck?
No, he doesn't want to watch airplanes and then separately
watch pit bulls. No,
he wants to watch aerial.
He wants to watch planes fighting.
Yeah, Patrick.
You know what?
The rest of the book, I read this kid as a fucking like serial killer, like weirdo.
I mean, he is, but that's not why.
It's like, why?
Oh man, that's so good.
It's a term specific to
It's never.
There's this thing.
It's never.
Patrick's like,
But the other Espers are little children that have aged into
they're
old people. But
they're old.
They're old boys. They're old.
But they still have their child bodies. But
they're old boys.
But they're old.
They're old.
Think of how terrifying that
their
is.
Powers and all that.
They're Benjamin Buttons.
No, they're not Benjamin. They're not aging backwards.
I know, but they're little kids that are old, is my point.
The idea of rolling up on an old man child using his telekinetic abilities to torture dogs into fighting each other is like one of the most terrifying visuals. So Takashi was like one of the most terrifying characters in the book.
Well, I'm sorry we ruined that for you, though. It's just
Takashi was terrifying.
Okay, but sorry, back to where we are in the story. Set up a little bit more. So Kaneda and Tetsuo are both in this youth motorcycle gang, right? They're all like lost youth in revolts.
Speaking of this, I mean, like this is to your point, Al, but like I constantly forget how young they are. Maybe it's because I watched this in like 1990, kind of thing. But like, and I was also at that time younger than them, but like. I was just like, what? They're 15? Like, holy shit. Like, in my brain, I guess they were at least like 18, 20, like almost, adults.
No anime is about anyone older than 15. So that's just a rule.
But I was just like, there's even like lines in the book that like the colonel will randomly be like Kaneda will run by with K or something like that. And then just like the colonel will just be like, get those fucking kids. And also, literally watch out for that guy. I know he looks young, but he's actually dangerous. Like kind of like he has to like go out of his way to be like, I can't stress this enough. He will shoot you. Like kind of thing. Like watch out for him. And I was like, that's awesome.
But so Kaneda and Tetsuo are friends, and they're in this hooligan bike gang, and so they're out fighting the clown gang on their bikes, and then that's when they run into Takashi, and he causes Tetsuo to crash.
There's a clown motorcycle gang in a future setting where the leader's name is Joker.
Well, but that's
looking at you, Man Beyond.
So another thing I wanted to talk about is there's clearly a very strong Clockwork Orange influence on this comic. The whole idea of like a youthful gang purely dedicated to excess and violence, and then the clown gang with all the there's very clear references to Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah, I don't think they're Joker reference or like DC Comics references. I was saying that Batman Beyond ripped this comic book off.
Oh yeah, but again, I'm just going back to this idea of like young high school students just being violent and fucking crazy, and it's very Clockwork Orange.
As Al mentioned, like one of the linchpin relationships is Tetsuo and Kaneda, who are childhood friends. My kind of only small criticism of this book is that the Tetsuo Kaneda relationship is one of the main relationships. And I feel like I love anime and manga because it does a very good job of focusing on friendships in a way that like I don't think Western media does. I really like love that about this medium. And I wish we had more moments of what their relationship and friendship was like prior to Tetsuo kind of losing his mind. Because it's obviously that Tetsuo does it because I wanted to see more of that to have more of emotional impact with their relationship, because he does a good job of showing that like neither of them can really kill each other because they still love each other, and like Tetsuo
just like Batman and the Joker.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're talking. So when he fights, when he kills Yamagata or Tamagata.
Yamagata.
What's his name?
Yeah.
Tamagotchi. It's Tamagotchi.
Yeah. When he kills him later, so there's a scene where like Kaneda has a gun on Tetsuo and he's about to shoot him, and he's like, shoot him, and he's like, I can't, like, and he can't do it, and then Yamagata's head explodes, and then he's like, okay, now I can. You killed Yamagata.
Also, by the way, those are like incredible panels.
Yeah.
The way it's like geometrically designed, and I mean it's. Incredible.
I got a little bit of it here.
Yeah. It's good. Next level.
But that was my only kind of like criticism was like I wish I just, even if it was like 12 pages of just like some memory of them. You get a little bit of it at the very end, but I felt like I wish I had that at the beginning.
They intersperse that in the movie better, I think.
Yeah.
They show.
So I agree. I definitely agree, Patrick, because the thing is, too, the movie just. Tetsuo from the beginning gets split off into he's becoming telekinetic.
Yeah, just right away. Yeah.
So a little bit more like build up before that of the relationship maybe would have been helpful. I mean, I agree with all that. A note about the relationship. So this is more specific to the film, I think, than the comic. But one of the main kind of like film critique ideas of this is that, again, going back to the post-war setting, Tetsuo is Japan and Kaneda is America. So coming out of post-war, Kanada's the guy who's got the cool bike. He's got the money. He's the better, stronger person. And Tetsuo's like in his shadow growing up. And then as the decades pass, like in the 80s, Japan was going to overtake America and be the number one power in the world and all that. So that's like that's mirrored by Tetsuo's kind of like geometric rise in power and strength. And like he discovers these abilities that even Kaneda doesn't have. And he's growing at a rate Kaneda can't even comprehend. But then it gets out of control, right? And it kind of deflates into nothing, sort of like in the early 90s, the Japanese economy collapsed. But so there is like a school of thought that Kaneda and Tetsuo represent the U.S. and Japan.
Right, but if you ask Otomo, he'd just be like, I don't know, they're cool
right.
guys.
In Otomo's interviews, he's just like,
they're cool guys.
Like two buds. They're just two buds that I wrote. But that is like one interpretation is that Tetsuo represents post-war Japan and Kaneda represents post-war America.
I mean, it's definitely, again, the subtext is there, whether he wrote it in there purposefully or not. But that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And again, it's a little more movie specific than manga specific, but that is one interpretation.
I look at the movie almost as like him kind of going like, okay, how can I get them to this story faster and correct some maybe things that I didn't get across the right way in the book. And I think like that's one of the things, like right away, like you see Kaneda and Tetsuo as kids and he like protects them in the schoolyard after he gets beat up by some bullies and shit, like stuff like that, almost like immediately. So like, you're right. If that was in the book, it might have given a little more context as to, who they were. Cause the context within the book is more like Kaneda's in charge of the gang and Tetsuo is kind of like a younger member of the gang that wants to be like a leader and respected, but isn't quite there yet. And he resents every time Kaneda is like protecting him. And then like, he's constantly saying like stuff like, I don't take orders from you anymore. And like stuff like that. I think that's like a big proponent of their relationship, but they definitely have the same relationship, the same friendship is there in the books. I think it's just not spelled out for you as much as it is in the movie.
And there's definitely, thematically too, like on a more universal level, there's definitely, speaking more on a Freudian atmosphere, there's definitely a level of like Kaneda father, Tetsuo son. Like the whole thing is about transformation, right? So we can tie it into adolescence, hormonal changes, all of that, you can interpret it that way as well. And in that sense, Tetsuo is definitely like the son transitioning through adolescence into adulthood and getting powers and strength that the father can't really control, and the conflict that happens there. So that's also kind of there in subtext.
Yeah, I just wish it was kind of like, because the way the art's done, he does do a great job of setting up the scenes, blocking and everything. Because after Tetsuo's powers have unlocked and he comes back and goes out with the gang, and him and Kaneda kind of have a tit for tat, and he says like, I don't take orders from you. Like, it's set up to make that a very dramatic moment, but I felt like I understood it was supposed to be dramatic, but I didn't feel it because I didn't know what Tetsuo was like prior to this version of him.
Yeah.
And they do make a lot of comments about Tetsuo as like one of their best writers and stuff like that. So it's kind of like,
he's like, I think the idea that Kaneda has been taking care of him and like kind of had him under his wing and like taught him how to ride and taught him how to stand up for himself and like, that kind of thing. Like, it's all kind of there. It's just not spelled out.
I was just going to say, it's kind of funny because sometimes when Kaneda is talking about Tetsuo, it's kind of like he's proud of him. So that also kind of ties back to
father son.
Yeah.
Or big brother, little brother, same kind of.
Yeah, right. I mean, to me, I view it both ways. So first of all, I agree with Patrick's point, but I don't know. I view it both ways, where it would have been nice to get a little bit more exposition or development of that relationship pre Tetsuo's change. But on the other hand, I also kind of appreciate just the like, look, the story's not about the past, and I'm not going to spoon feed you what their exact relationship is. And we've skipped over. So before Tetsuo breaks back out and takes over the clown gang, we skipped over. So after the crash, he's taken in by Colonel Zaddy's group, and he's experimented upon, and his psychic abilities are kind of unleashed and like fermented by whatever drugs they have there. And we also find out by, one of the scientists there kind of talks about how Tetsuo's wavelengths are on par with Akira's. So we kind of, we learn who that mysterious person may or may not be. We kind of get hinted at that person exists. And we get, like, again, some of the more iconic visual representations, like the Tetsuo leaving the hospital and using psychic powers to, like, kill people. The kind of invisible telekinetic forces creating craters and stuff like that are, again, all over media after this. Like, it's, everywhere uses it, from like X-Men, even the Matrix has stuff kind of like that. Like, all media takes over that kind of way to represent, like, telekinetic force, I guess.
This panel of him just going, the pain, I can't stand it. And then
it's
you don't see it. And then 5 seconds later, they find that guy. Like, there's a guy in the hallway kind of like watching him, and he has glasses, and he's just like reading a book, and he's like, huh? And like Tetsuo is there. And when they cut back to that hallway, it's just like blood's everywhere, and there's like glasses on the floor, and he's like, it's horrifying.
But so Tetsuo breaks out from that, and then he discovers, so I don't remember the specifics, but he discovers like some kind of street drug that makes him feel good, right?
Well, so we've skipped. I'll do a quick summary. So Kaneda's gang is just driving around the heart of destruction, which is a very poetic name to give to the point of destruction that Akira caused at World War III. And then Takashi shows up, crashes Tetsuo's motorcycle. Tetsuo gets taken by the colonel. The rest of the guys are at school.
The gym teacher beats the shit out of them.
The gym teacher beats the shit out of them. The way
his hair is amazing.
The pacing of the story at this point is great. The hair is amazing. The gym teacher's hair is pretty amazing. But it's like,
we no talking about hair on this podcast.
He literally beats the crap out of them and goes, like, there's a full panel of him going like,
as a bald man, we will not talk about
All right, let's discuss this.
I have nothing to add.
So Kaneda, I have a like the definition of a love-hate relationship with this guy, because when I love him, like, I love him, and when I fucking hate him, like, I fucking hate him. But Tetsuo's missing. They don't know where he went. They all go back to school the next day. They go to their hangout spot after that, which is where Kei is, randomly meeting up with Ryu, the terrorist people. And so he kind of just like launches
freedom fighters, Patty. Freedom fighters.
They're called, on Wikipedia, they're called terrorists. So,
they are terrorists.
But
they're freedom fighters.
Kaneda just is like annoyed that this older man is talking to Kei, and goes over and just like creeps on her, and they run away from him. He chases after them, runs into Takashi, and then he starts threatening Takashi, and it's all weird.
He's like, "Hey, you were there when my friend got hurt.
Yeah,
I'm gonna fuck you up."
Takashi is like a 50-year-old man in a like 5-year-old's body, and Kaneda is like a 15-year-old
boy.
The way that Kaneda in this volume just like manhandles Takashi, if you go back and look at some of the panels when he's like kicking him and stuff, he beats the shit out of this guy. And then,
well, that's what I mean from the Clockwork Orange influence is what I meant. Like, these teenagers who just like 0 to violence in 60 seconds. Like, they just no inhibition, right? Yeah.
Like, I wish I'd seen their childhood, because it makes sense in a post-apocalyptic world where there's probably like no law enforcement, like no, like, you probably would be pretty savage. Like, that you probably have to be savage to just like fucking survive that world. But he comes off as so callous and just like crazy, especially in this first volume. He definitely becomes more of a protagonist.
So they don't. He doesn't actually like do anything to him at that scene, though. Like, in that part, you know, like, they're like, I mean, he's going to. But he doesn't, because like Takashi's like, ah, and like the thing explodes and falls, and they're all like, oh shit.
I mean, but to
there's a scene though later when Masaru shows up and everything.
Yeah,
Kaneda kicks Takashi in the stomach like down a cliff, and then like pulls a gun out and is like got a point in his head, being like,
oh yeah, that part, yes. That part, yes.
But I mean, I think Patrick's larger point is that Kaneda isn't like a standard.
He's not,
chivalric hero. Like,
I still root for him so hard, though. Weirdly, like, he writes him so well, and I'm like, I was reading volume 1, and I was just like, wow, Kaneda's kind of a shitbag. Like, he's kind of a horrible person.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
Piece of shit, man.
And he's kind of better later, but not a lot.
They definitely,
he changes, but it's slow.
he's not the piece of shit. The first volume, he is a piece of
shit. He gets better, but he's still, I think overall his character is kind of that, I don't want to say archetype, but like, you know, the charismatic sort of charlatan, like knave, you know, he's kind of, but in the volume one, he's real rough though. Yeah.
He writes him so well that like I do have a love-hate relationship with him, because when I love him, like some of the shit he says, I'm like, that is the funniest.
Oh, it's the best. He says the awesome. Sometimes the shit that comes out of his mouth, you're just like, what?
He just, I'm like, I wish I could live. I wish I could go through my life living life the way Kaneda did. Like he lives in a post-apocalyptic world where there's like. They're 15 killing people, and he has got the most nonchalant. He's not stressed about a fucking thing. Yeah. The dude is just like living in the moment. He's
got the answer. Yeah.
Like the entire, there's a scene where the entire military he's on like the military base, and he kicks over the bucket, and they're like,
and he's like,
spotlights are, and he's just like, fuck. And he's just running. And he's like,
great.
These guys don't give up. I'm like, I would have had a heart attack, shit myself, and passed out.
And then gotten shot probably.
Well, that's kind of one of the interesting things too. I mentioned the tonal difference between the movie and the comic, because the movie does feel kind of more adult and like a little more serious and. I mean, kind of the same character, but the movie has just
he's definitely more childish
adult tone, and in the comic,
more childish and dangerous because of that. I think.
Yeah, but in the comic, he's definitely way more of like I'm just a happy-go-lucky guy, like the military's got his guns on me, woo 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 woo, you know, kind of guy. And the movie's kind of more serious. It downplays that a little bit. It's sort of more serious adult tone-wise.
Well, he also comes off more being like 18, 19 in the movie, right? I don't know. I saw it when I was a kid. He's probably
Patrick. In no piece of Japanese media is the main character older than 15. I cannot stress that enough.
There's a fucking scene after Takashi causes this like mini explosion in downtown. So the military is rushing to like find the kid, and they're already out looking for him. Ryu and Kai are looking for him. Kaneda is looking for him as well with his gang because they're trying to beat him up or something because he got Tetsuo hurt. And like they split off, and because the cops, the military are there, and Kai randomly saves Kaneda from like a military personnel guy, like a soldier, and he turns to shoot, and she says stop, don't, and then she just goes and blows his head, like blows a hole through his head. And it's like in the movie the scene's there, but it's a little different. But his head, there's a hole through his brain, and his head hits the wall, and Kaneda goes, shit. And then the next panel is just Kaneda against the wall going like, hey, mister. Like, I like seeing if he's alive still. And I'm just like, dude, that's the end of that, buddy. But in the movie, he's just like, hey, it's okay. Like, if you've never killed a guy before, we can go turn yourself in. I'll wait for you until you get out of jail. Like, he's just still trying to get in Kai's pants. It's insane. But yeah, like this,
he's also, apart from being violent, he's very horny.
Well, he's a 15-year-old boy.
Well, one of the big things with his character that I hated. So Kaneda, a big symbol in this, as Joe's mentioned, is that the psychic kids have to take a pill like every day, otherwise they get like crazy migraines. Their powers, like I guess, kill them. But Kaneda also makes his own pills, which I guess are kind of like Adderall or something. Like I got the impression they're like speed. But there's a nurse at the school that helps him make the pills, and it's implied that
they're fucking.
They're implied.
It's implied that they're. It's implied.
It's implied. It's stated that
it's implied.
I mean, she doesn't. She says, "I'm pregnant," and he goes, "What does he say?"
He says, "Cool. Maybe I can watch you have.
Can I watch? Can I watch?" And she's like, implying that it's his kid. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Later on, he goes back to that same nurse, like. Because he's just like, all right, I'll pick my shit up later. See you later. And he like leaves because Tetsuo is back or something. And then,
he gets the main pill he gets the psychic pill, and he asks her.
Right.
So she's doing him a favor. He's still using.
But she's also his normal drug hookup, I think, is the key. You know,
except when she's like, I'm pregnant, and he's like, oh, crazy. Anyway. And then he goes back later and she slams the door on him, and he's like, God, what's her problem?
I know, it's the best. / worst.
But she's a working professional, probably in her mid-20s, so really she's the predator.
Yeah, I mean, it's her fault.
And he's a 15-year-old boy. She's the predator in that.
when Kaneda getting the capsule is like a big part of this volume. You know?
I wanted to back up to when he gets the capsule because
that's what I want to talk about. Yeah.
So the way Masaru is built
does punt Takashi down the hill.
Masaru, all right. One thing I want to mention: Masaru is another old boy, and he's
the boss baby.
He wears a little suit.
He's boss
baby in a suit, and I respect it. He's got a paunch and a little suit.
The way that we're introduced to like the antagonist, which is the military, which is Colonel Zaddy. We call him Colonel Zaddy because he's like a big daddy, like very high sexual energy coming off of him.
Yeah.
Patrick can't even talk. Patrick is so shook by Colonel Zaddy, he can't even finish that sentence.
I can't handle it. He's got a crew cut military uniform, and he's got like a mustache. He's like 8 feet tall. I don't know.
He's just wearing some kick-ass suits.
Masaru, he's like, when they find Takashi, the colonel makes a call, and he's like, bring in Masaru. And everyone's like, Masaru? And you're like, oh shit, Masaru must be like the big bad, like the guy who's pulling the colonel's strings.
He's a little old boy in a wheelchair. He's in a Professor X chair, and he's in a suit. He's a little boy.
He's a little boss baby.
Even that though, his image is still scary because he's like in a hovercraft. And you're like, oh, this is like scary.
I found him terrifying in the movie when I was a kid. I thought he was terrifying. But I thought all the kids were terrifying.
They are terrifying. But then it gets funny because his first action, he's like terrifying. He shows up and he's like, Takashi needs his medicine. And he throws the pill and he's so unathletic that like he misses.
I literally wrote, why did he throw that fucking capsule? Dumb old man baby. And then I wrote Akira inspired boss baby.
Yeah, why didn't he just use his psychic powers to move
why?
Pill, right? Rather than like his weak old boy arm.
No, they all have different powers. They all have different powers. I'm not sure what Masaru's specific
his
powers
power is to fail, because I don't think he achieves that.
Well, that's your pill. Literally, the worst part about it is like the ground is literally it might as well be an earthquake. Like the ground is erupting around them. It's not like they're just standing there and he's like, here's your pill, Takashi, and it throws it through the air and he doesn't get to it in time. It's like Takashi's getting like flipped off of a rock, like flying through the air, and he's like, "Take your pill!" Like, you're gonna make that shot?
Well,
you're getting that 3-pointer as the buzzer goes off? What are you, insane?
I want to make the point that
Kaneda grabs it and he's like, "Got it."
But Joe, like, if you and I were on even ground, 10 feet apart, and I threw a tiny pill at you, we'd fuck it up.
I mean, in fairness, they're like 2 feet apart and he still misses. But I mean, in that situation, anyone would.
Yeah, don't throw a tiny pill across.
Look at his
down. Wait, look at this. Look at this.
So he throws.
Look how far apart they are. It's Jesus. It's Adam and God.
It is Adam and God with.
And he's like, take your pill, and then it goes like 2 inches, and falls straight down. And Kaneda's like, yoink, thanks, buddy. Later.
It's just funny that's the face he makes after just doing the simple athletic ability of throwing a small capsule like 3 feet. Masaru. My point is, Masaru is like the first few panels when he comes off the helicopter. I'm like, oh, this guy's gonna be fucking scary.
Yeah,
and then he's like,
just throwing that.
Yeah, 2 seconds later, nothing. And then they're so concerned about that drug getting out on the streets because obviously it's like ridiculously potent. It would kill a normal human being and like easily, but
it wouldn't kill me.
No, not me either. I mean, I have psychic abilities.
Yeah, we could. No problem.
But back to the main story, Tetsuo has been experimented on by the government, and they just release him, and he goes back to school. And he goes.
Well, but they're observing. I mean, they're still sort of observing him while he's free.
But so he returns. He gets beaten up by the clown gang, and then the colonel shows back up to school to grab him, and he runs into Kaneda again. And I think this is the third time they've randomly run into each other, and Kaneda's like, "Are you fucking kidding?" Like, what the fuck is going on?
It's pretty awesome.
We'd have to go through all the details, but Tetsuo takes over the clown gang and basically uses it to source drugs to him so that he can not have a constant migraine.
I think what he's doing is like synthesizing like a very potent form, whatever drug Kaneda was synthesizing.
Yeah, I think so.
I did want to point just art-wise, the scene when Tetsuo shows up at the clown gang's headquarters and confronts Joker, and he's like, who the fuck is this guy? And he uses his powers. They go to meet at a bowling alley. and he uses all of his powers to throw the bowling balls up to the ceiling and then throw them back down on the ground. I was like, that would be really cool to see like done in live action, because I felt like that's true. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool moment.
I think Netflix is developing a live. I don't know if it's a film or a series, but Netflix is developing a live.
They've been talking about that for so long. I just really hope it just stays in developmental hell for the rest of eternity.
I mean, look, we got Ghost in the Shell.
Literally nothing will ever be right. Like they could recreate the exact animated movie beat for beat, and it would still be bad. Like there's no way you can make that be good.
Unless it was like a 6-movie thing and the budget was like several $billion per movie.
I think they should do one movie and Scarlett Johansson should play Condit. I think that's how it should work. All right, but let's get to the end of Volume 1. We've already kind of hinted.
So let's cover a little bit of Tetsuo. I mean, so we talked about Tetsuo where he's at, and we kind of talked about the gang war a little bit, but we can get there. But the key, so they do go check on Akira for like a minute. The colonel goes down and checks on him, and he's like, "Is everything okay?" And they're like, "Everything's fine." Oh,
those hips don't lie. Yep.
Shakira.
Those hips don't lie. It's fine. But yeah, we do find out that Akira's buried under like a climate-controlled, frozen. One thing I wanted to talk, because one other thing I noticed reading the manga, one of my favorite video games growing up was Final Fantasy VII. Mm-hmm. So much of Final Fantasy VII is straight lifted from Shakira. I had no idea. So Genova's pod is basically Akira's pod. Like it's like this mounded earth with tubes coming out of it. It's exactly the same. Midgar is Neo Tokyo with like the lights, the lights and the tower islands going. I mean, so much of FF7 is just straight lifted.
That is crazy. I didn't think of that.
Yeah. No, but if you look at like the Akira pod that has the name Akira on a metal plaque on a little door, I mean, that's exactly Genova. That is the Genova pod. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
So, side note.
I really appreciated the science lesson break that the Cook took and told me what Kelvin temperatures were, and also told me what Dewar flask walls meant. I was like,
sounds bad. It sounds like the fact that those things are changing is bad.
I do have one thing to say about like before the gang war ramps up, and by this point, Kaneda and Kai, he's kind of like with them a little bit. There's the weird scene of like Kaneda being like all ripped apart and in light, and he like a ghost presence forms, and he's like,
what the fuck was that?
He's like Kai, and then he's gone, kind of thing, and you're just like, what was that? And you don't know until, I mean, when does that happen? Book 4? I
still don't know what it was though. Is it K or Kai? There's also the other boy that's in the gang. That's the little one. That's
Kaisuke. Kazuko. You're talking about the really short kid?
Yeah, he
wears like kind of a suit, but he kind of wears like a collared shirt with a jacket. Yeah,
like an Avril Lavigne type look.
Yeah, his name is longer. It's like Kaisuko or Kaisuki or something like that. And so K and him even kind of make a joke. Like she's like, oh, K and K, or Keisuke or whatever.
My only notes left for this last volume is the art. The art, like there's certain panels. There's the image of Tetsuo riding his bike with just his like telekinesis, which is
just
amazing.
Doing this.
Yeah, with his arms crossed.
They gave that to the Joker guy in the
movie.
So
stupid.
Yeah,
I was like,
kind of
really?
a weird choice, but yeah.
Maybe he just loved the aesthetic of that, and he's just like, "This guy's a badass. I'm going to show that somehow."
Yeah,
because like he doesn't come back in the movie. Like that's the end of him in the movie. Like in the book, he's like a recurring character. That's kind of what I was saying before. Like there's characters in the books that are like extensively like come back in later volumes, or they die later, and like they had these huge arcs. And in the movies, it's like a blip. I wrote the hoverbike scene is so awesome and cinematic, and I love it to death. But I really feel like he just put them in there to explode fantastically, like every time.
I'm pretty sure.
Every time they show up, they're just there so they can crash in an enormously amazing way.
I think if you asked Otomo, he'd probably just admit, yeah, I wanted them to explode.
Yeah, but they're awesome. I love every time the hoverbikes come, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for the explosions.
The floating platforms or whatever.
The floating hover things. Yeah.
I just love the art. There's the other image of it's side by side Kaneda and Tetsuo like are
I wrote that
riding towards each other. And the reason I love this is because this panel happens first, implying they're moving like crazy fast. And then I already texted y'all about it, but the panel of because Kaneda abandons Kay, so she finds a Vespa and she's on a little Vespa, and he does the same thing with her. And that page is one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen, because the first panel is like her in the Vespa and it's the same background, like implying she's moving really fast, and then she does a quick turn on the street and it looks like the street's abandoned, and then it cuts to like
cops behind her. Is that what you're talking about?
Like military's behind her, and she causes $1 billion worth of like property damage because they all crash, and she's just like, my bad, like she's fucking Cher from Clueless.
No, yeah, I really love the mirroring of those panels because they're in two completely different places, but they're side by side on opposite pages, and it's as if they're riding right at each other, but they're literally not in the same scene. And it's just fantastic, like the way he, just like little tiny things like that in the art happen all the time, and we would literally take 17 podcasts to describe all of them. But man, there's a lot of good scenes like that.
The art in the last like 100 pages of the first volume had some of the best stuff I think in the entire series. Because I already mentioned, but when Yamagata dies, like it's the panel of him falling backwards, and then you see from his POV Kaneda, because he's like upside down, and then it's his head explodes. Like it was so perfect. Like it just breaks my brain that one guy came up with all of this. I also love how Kaneda's like catchphrase is no shit, and I never can tell how he's saying it. Like I can't tell if he's saying it like with the laser gun, Kay's like, wow, this thing's amazing, and he just says no shit, and I can't tell if he's like no shit, or if he's like no shit, no shit, no shit.
Yeah,
he says it like 3
it's
or 4
all about
times.
the inflection.
It's
all right, so we've already talked about this, but
the only thing I wish I read the English version, but like if you read the Japanese, maybe we could know what he actually said for no shit. That would help.
Yeah.
So Kaneda can't shoot Tetsuo. Then he continues to fight him and goes into the warehouse, and the whole thing, Tetsuo's powers go crazy. The whole thing collapses. Basically, they're still just trying to fight nonstop. Like, even though Kaneda can't do anything to fight Tetsuo at all. And then
the capsule. He weirdly can't, because Kaneda is sort of indestructible.
Yeah,
like if you think about it, he's sort of Luke Cage. Like everything.
He's got some plot armor for sure.
Yeah, he has Luke Cage like plot armor. He's indestructible.
Like, I would say he's more like Domino, like luck powers, where shit just goes his way.
Yeah, like shit blows up around him all the time, and he runs and barely misses, and it just slams down behind him, and just constantly.
Like he could be in Tower 2 9/11, and it all crawls down, and he just walks out. He's like nothing.
Well, he'd slide down, and then the rubble would fall perfectly, giving him stairs down to the last one, and then the whole building would come down, and he'd keep running, and somehow he'd like a window would fall right directly on him, and he'd keep running and somehow get out. Volume 1 ends. Tetsuo gets the capsule, and the colonel's like, "Don't take that pill. If you take that, you're gonna die." Blah blah blah. Like that's not meant for you. And Tetsuo's like, "Oh, okay." And I love how the colonel, before he even stops like seizuring on the ground, the colonel's like, "Get his body on the helicopter. I guess let's get out of here." Like he's already like turned around and walking away. I fucking love it. It's so funny.
Other thing, so the colonel, I guess, is in charge of these old boy babies, like Masaru and stuff. Clearly doesn't know how to deal with kids, because like you don't tell a 14-year-old bike gang member don't do that. Like that's the worst way to not have them eat a pill. You should have said like, "Oh, that pill is like crushed cucumber and vitamin C." That's like it's pure nutrition. That's like that's
nothing.
That's how you get Tetsuo to not eat the pill.
He's like, it's gonna make you shit your pants immediately if you take it.
Yeah. All that pill's gonna do is make you shit your pants. That's all we use it for.
My only last note about Volume 1 at the end is we've already kind of talked about it, but like going back to wishing there was more establishment of Kaneda and Tetsuo's relationship, because you would think Kaneda should not be able to harm Tetsuo at all, but Kaneda, he can't do it, and then Tetsuo kills Yamagata, and then Kaneda's like, "Oh, fuck you," and then he shoots Tetsuo, and Tetsuo like can't stop the bullet, and it shoots him through the torso.
Yeah, but
and it's like but it's still like
But you don't
at
know
that
yet.
moment. At that moment.
Oh, that's true. You don't know, right? Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, and it's also a really bad wound for him. Still in that moment for like a minute.
But he's also
because he takes the pill after that.
He's retreating from Kaneda, and Kaneda is going after him, and it's kind of like almost like a son who can't believe his younger brother, older brother, like that the brother actually did. Like you pushed him to the point by killing his best friend that he's now just fucking shot you. Like Tetsuo seems completely flabbergasted that he's been put.
Yes, that absolutely happens. So, like he literally goes, he shot me. He actually shot me. You know, like after he's tried to murder him like 10 times.
Yeah,
and I'm like, what do you mean he actually shot you?
But to Patrick's point, I think it's that idea of like the child that just like slaps his dad for 2 years, and then the dad smacks him, and he's
also
like,
Kai saves Kaneda again in that tussle. So she saves him once in the beginning. She saves Kaneda twice in Volume 1 alone. I'm just saying.
Joe,
just
I want to
constantly saving his ass.
Joe, I want to ask you 2 questions.
Yes.
Pronounce the name Moira.
Moira.
Pronounce that.
I would say it's called Moira McTaggart.
Okay. Now pronounce the name Kei. I
don't know.
It's K.
Is it K or Kai? We were just saying that when you were off screen.
Why would
I can't remember.
I know, but I was.
Wait, so is it K? I missed it.
Of course.
Okay.
K-A-I would be Kai, logically.
Oh, wait. What is it? How is it spelled?
K-E-I.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what it is? I think I misspelled that in all my notes.
But Patrick, M-O-I-R-A. How would you pronounce that?
You already did it. You did it wrong.
Moira.
Okay.
No, it's Myra, Patty. We know.
Don't confuse it.
I wanted to say Myra, but I have to focus on pronouncing it correctly when I say it. Moira.
Okay, but you're right. Okay, but back to this.
Okay, so the Colonel says
41.
The Colonel says, "Come with me if you want to live. You're number 41 now," and he goes with the military.
He did a Terminator. Hey, this influenced Terminator 2.
Yeah, it really did. Also, you know, in all seriousness, though, like, so Tetsuo is like faced with this choice of like, I have one pill. I just took one pill. Finally made my headache go away. This guy has a lot more of them. And the Colonel even says like, hey, I can give you training. I can help you develop your powers, and I can give you more of those pills because you're going to need them. And what's going to happen when you come off that pill? And he's like, oh, I know enough about drugs to know that that's not going to be good. So like he goes with him kind of willingly, I would say. And then Kay, and Kaneda get, I guess, imprisoned, arrested.
Yeah, Arrested Development. That didn't make any sense.
So, you know, Akira Volume 2, guys.
Shakira. Oh, those hips don't lie. Yeah, so Volume 2 starts with, well, we got the old boys talking in there. So
is this our introduction to Kyoko? Because she's queen.
No, she wasn't. I think she made appearances in Volume 1, right? Or maybe she. Maybe
I don't think she did. Yeah, you don't see her.
But let's talk about the child.
The creepy nursery.
Adults,
the creepy nursery.
Adults and the nursery they live in. Yeah, is. So in the movie, this is very creepy because teddy bears.
It reminds me of the giant baby nursery in Spirited Away. It's very creepy and weird.
Yeah. But so these old boys live in like, again, like we said, a nursery. It has childlike toys.
Old kids.
I would kind of love a prequel to what these kids. I don't understand their characters.
Well, the movie gives you a little.
We just want a prequel of a day in the life. I would just want a day in the life of Takashi, just watching dogfights.
And airplanes separately.
Kyoko's just laying in her bed all the time.
What if the Colonel gives Takashi like airplane battle footage and he's like, no, I wanted literal dogfights and airplanes separately.
You fucked up.
You didn't listen to me, Colonel. I wanted the two different things. Kyoko is the third Esper child that we haven't mentioned yet. She's a lot. She's a lot to talk about.
No, she was in Volume 1, right? Doesn't the Colonel come talk to her and she says, I had a dream about Akira? Yeah.
Regardless, we haven't talked about her really yet on the podcast.
Yeah. But I was just saying she was in that volume for like a second.
She is serving a lot.
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with her.
She's super old. She's like a skeletal old baby girl in like a cradle. Yeah. She's just a little old baby girl in a cradle. And she has all sorts of dreams about Akira coming back and all that stuff. But she has a lot to say. A lot to say about Tetsuo.
She's the most powerful of the three.
Yeah. And she, in this volume, she can project herself onto Kei and kind of take over Kei's body and actions. So she's a powerful little baby girl.
Well, I kind of like loved her. Well, this isn't her introduction because she was in the first volume, as Joe said. But they're talking about Tetsuo shows up and she can sense Tetsuo. And she's talking to Takashi and Masaru about it. And she says, yes, he's very powerful. In the end, he will surpass all of us. And then Masaru says, do you think he'll be powerful enough to defeat Akira? And she says, yes. And then Masaru says, if he does, what will become of us? And she goes, I don't know, but we will not be sitting by idly either. Which I was like,
there are ways in which we can hamper number 41.
She's got a plan. She's got a plan.
And she executes that plan. Like, I feel like she was basically the...
Yeah, this book is essentially them going, I'm worried about Tetsuo.
Goofed, though.
Let's hamper him. Let's like hold him back, or let's try to take care of him now while he's still like undeveloped.
Yes.
Like, so this volume is essentially...
This volume
is doing that plan, and then also Kaneda and Kei trying to also kill Tetsuo. But so that's Kyoko, a large chunk of this.
But Kyoko way miscalculates because her efforts to stop Tetsuo teach him to use abilities that he didn't know he has and like inadvertently make him way stronger.
Yeah, but if the Colonel didn't get in the fucking way, she would have executed that shit and been done with it.
Yeah. We get a quick cut of Ryu working at a construction site at the Olympic Village, like keeping tabs on the military.
Nice. We get a quick. Is Ryu not a zaddy? How do we feel about Ryu?
He's not a zaddy. No, I was just about to say. Can I just say I did not give a fuck
about Ryu.
Ryu was I didn't care what he was doing. I thought it was random as fuck that his second in command had a side quest storyline where he was fighting against the other guy who was undercover.
That guy was so obsessed with him too.
I was like, who cares about this?
He's like, I'm going to find that guy that put me in a hospital bed, and I am going to cut him down.
I had the same thought of like, who is this random fucking scientist, and why is he a main character all of a sudden?
He wasn't a scientist. He was like one of the agents.
Well,
he's one of the agents that was like helping. Yeah.
But they run into him as he's dressed as a scientist.
Al, look at this photo of Ryu. He's not a zaddy. And I don't know. I wish I had an iPad to compare him side by side with Colonel Zaddy, but I think we get it then.
Well, what is he? But he's not. You don't like the cake.
He's 5'11" with.
So in that scene, we get introduced to Nezu.
No, you got to be at least 6'6" to be a zaddy.
No, Patrick, it's not 6. You have to be 6'6". 6 figures, 6 feet, 6 inches. That's the requirement for entry. So. I don't think Ryu is any of those 6s.
Don't say I see, Patrick. You know better than Al. He doesn't know things.
Look how tall this motherfucker is.
Okay, he's a giant man. He is a giant man.
He's a giant man.
He is 7 feet tall.
They literally mention in the book, I think, like it's either Kaneda or somebody else that's just like, look at this fucking insane tall guy. like he literally like points out how huge he is and that he's probably used his height to intimidate people.
Back to that earlier point about the other agent of the knife fight and why that's there. I think that's just he's writing this issue by issue over 8 years. And you got to add in some filler.
I think that was important to what was happening with the characters that were in the ensemble cast at that moment in time. And the second the event happens, so to speak, at the end of this or whatever,
mattering.
It's like none of that matters. None of that matters anymore. Nezu and Lady Miyako, like she dreams of disaster. I wrote real rapey guard with Kei. Foreshadowing for later, more predatory books in the series.
Joe, one side note.
Kei escapes.
One thing you just said. So she dreams of disaster. Wonderful early 2000s emo band.
Yeah.
Like that should be
fantastic.
She Dreams of Disaster is perfect for that era.
So in the first couple, like I would say 100 pages of this volume, Tetsuo is learning a ton about his abilities, either from the doctor being scared and just like revealing shit, or when he goes confronts the old babies, you know, about like what's going on and who Akira is. And just like, and then even between those moments, like the doctor's like, oh, your power kind of resonates with Akira, like we're worried about it, but also we're kind of intrigued, and like he's just telling him all this stuff, and then he's like, well, I saw that chick teleport. So like post the fight where they take over Kay's body, he's like, I saw that chick teleport, and like, how can I do that? And the doctor's like, no, like that's, everyone's powers are very specific. Like even though you're powerful or going to be powerful, like that's just, it's not something you can even learn. It's just like, that's, you have these kind of abilities, they have those kind of abilities. And by the end of that fight, he like literally accidentally teleports himself out of the building, and you're just, and the colonel's like, you told him where Akira was? And he's like, I just told him where he was. I didn't think he could actually get there. And then like, and you're just like, this is every step of the way they try to like hold him back. It's just like another wall he just punches straight through. Like every time they tell him something's impossible, he does it. Like every time they tell him he doesn't have a power, he does it. And I'm like, when are you going to learn to stop telling him anything? Like he's going to figure it out.
Let's talk about that. That scientist is the most like spineless loser human of all.
Man,
all he does, Tetsuo's just like, death. But every time, you know, the doctor's like, oh, you know, you can't do this. And Tetsuo's like, well, tell me where Akira is. And the doctor's like, well, okay, Akira's over there. This doctor, like, what are you doing? He just has
I think he genuinely thought like Tetsuo wouldn't be able to get to him. And I'm like, why would you think that? You know, like, of all people, you know what he is maybe capable of and already capable
the doctor, of. I disagree. I think the doctor in his
he was just shit scared.
Was like, I want him to see Akira. I want to see what.
No, that's
he even says as much, sort of.
The doctor said, like, I bought tickets and I'm here for the show.
Yeah.
Go meet Akira.
Colonel. That's what the colonel legit says that. He's like, you're trying to satisfy your own fucking weird ass twisted, like.
He's like, I'm trying to keep him from Akira. It's weird though, because the way the colonel talks about it, he talks about it as an inevitability. Like it's something that they want to do. Like maybe they see Tetsuo as like a solution to the problem that is Akira, who is just frozen right now. Well, like, and once they train him and have him brainwashed enough, like he'll go and take out Akira, even though, like, they'll unfreeze Akira on purpose and like bring him to meet Akira and like let them fight it out, and they know Tetsuo will win, and theoretically by that point Tetsuo would be their like lapdog or kind of thing.
Well, the movie,
but the doctor is just like, yeah, let's go there now, and he's like, not yet, you idiot, like kind of thing, like
But because of spoilers, I won't go into the movie's a little bit different. But the movie, the colonel specifically says like, we can use Tetsuo to control Akira's power.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe in the comic is a similar sort of like maybe they think they can.
Well, the colonel specifically asked, he's like, because the doctor is like going on and on about how Tetsuo is so powerful. And the colonel's like, well, what is his personality like? And he's like, what are you talking about? Why does that matter? And he's like, well, if we can't control him.
He's like, we need to control Tetsuo. Because if we can't control Tetsuo, we can't control him to control Akira or take out Akira.
Because Akira is technically like a little boy still. He was 12 when he
and Akira is not an old boy. He's a boy.
No,
he's a boy.
Well, he's been frozen. He's been frozen.
Well, and he's also like, I don't think he's a human anymore by the time he's real. Like, I think
he's like transcendent, right? He's so far beyond what the other Espers.
But yeah, I think the colonel's like ideal world would be Tetsuo being like very loyal to the military and having so much power that they can wake Akira back up and use
control Akira
to basically use their power to restart.
Yeah, and the doctor wants that to happen like now, and the colonel is like, you're out of your fucking mind. You just want to see that to see it because you're a scientist. Like, that's not going to work yet. Like, we need to stop giving him information. We need to hold him back until we can control him, kind of thing.
As much as I wish I would have been. Oops, you mean the secret location of where our secret
You mean exactly where Akira is? My bad.
Although here's where
I've been such a bad scientist today.
Oops. Not me again.
Oh man.
I will throw the colonel under the bus though, because the only reason why, so they bring Tetsuo back to be tested on, and he's right there like 10 feet away from them, and the colonel's like, we need to make sure we do this right. We don't need a second Akira happening. And then Tetsuo's like, second Akira? And then like a few issues later, Tetsuo was like, "Who's Akira?" And the Colonel's like, "Who told you that name?" Like,
and you're like, "You did."
I'm like, sometimes he's the most practical person in the room, and sometimes he's just like an insane person who says crazy shit.
I think I like the Colonel more in later volumes, like in the post.
As much as I hate to say it, I would probably be the Colonel if I was one of the characters.
Art note. I wanted to make an art note because it's showing up on the screen now, and we were talking about Tetsuo getting experimented upon. This is more movie specific, but the scene where Tetsuo is in this kind of like open MRI machine being tested on is incredible because so in the movie it's this giant apparatus that just
that's just like shifting around his body
and manipulates him and moves around, and just kind of that visual of like the technology just completely enveloping the human and moving it and testing it and scanning it's really
the amount that he conveys in the comic though to get that point across is amazing. Like his use of motion and movement and like body language and like the little blurs of light on the end of the gun when like someone's firing but they move, or the motorcycles, like the beam of light that follows the headlight of the motorcycle as they like skid to a stop. Like your brain fills in that motion, and it's like his ability to like draw those kind of things is like beyond anybody's
and
thought process. Like
a macro visual note.
Amazing. Yeah,
and we haven't really got into a lot of this, but a macro visual note too, which was really cool about the comic, is just the scale of everything is so large. It is so over superhuman scale. Like nothing. Yeah,
you still get close-ups and you still see the emotion in people's faces, but you also have like that's kind of what I was saying.
Well, I meant more the architecture, like the
that's what I'm saying. Like in the first, like
everything.
If they show it from afar, if they show someone walking down steps or whatever, like the architecture and buildings around them are like drawn to such detail that it's just like mind-blowing. And in later volumes when the city is destroyed, spoilers, but like it's that times 1,000, because it's like every building is like tipped over and there's rubble everywhere, and like all the streets end and they're caved in, and there's like you can see the layers of like the sewer beneath the street, and like you're just like, oh my god, and like water's flowing out and trickling down, and like there's rocks everywhere, and you're just like, that's just a panel to show that they're walking down the street. Like it wasn't like I need to show this hole because it shows something. It's just that's it. Like it's just background.
I mean, I agree with what you said. The point I was making was different. I was making a point more about the dimensions and scale of Neo Tokyo technology and
it's
how
definitely there.
Basically, nothing in Neo Tokyo is built for humans. It's built for technology. It's built for the Olympics. It's built for a military. Like nothing is actually built for people. And I just
the roads are huge, so a tank can drive down. Yeah, like it's really just, everything is gigantic. Yeah, but like the first like 100-ish pages is basically just them trying to take Tetsuo out as he's slowly gaining knowledge and abilities.
Also, Kei, I think like she doesn't have psychic powers, but she's a medium, so like
she's like a vessel. Yeah.
Like all three, Takashi, Masaru, and Kyoko are like channeling their psychic powers through Kei, using her to like try to kill Tetsuo. Mm-hmm. And the Colonel figures out what's happening, because I also wanted to make a quick tangent that the Colonel kind of reminded me of Brother Blood from the current, like the Outsiders run we just did. Because like his subordinates keep fucking up. They're like, "Sir, the prisoner has escaped." He's like, "How the fuck did she escape?" He's like, "Again?" He's like, "This is the most secure prison that we have. Like, what is happening?" So I wanted to make that point. But also, like, Kyoko is trying to kill Tetsuo, and the Colonel figures it out, confronts her, and I thought Kyoko...
He literally screams at the top of his lungs, "What do you think you're doing?" And they're like, "Huh?"
Going back to the art...
the mirroring of
Kei, and I thought Kyoko was gonna like back down and be like scared of the Colonel, and she was straight up like, she was like, "No, we're trying to kill Tetsuo." And then she goes into...
"Why are you manipulating her?" And she goes, "To kill him." Like she just said, "To kill who?" And she goes, like, "Yes, to kill Tetsuo." But it's not her; it's Kei speaking, and I fucking love all of that. I'm just like, this is awesome. I think I wrote like, it's really cool to see like which like, is it Kay talking or is it the kids talking? You know, because at first you don't really like know like how much of her is bleeding through, like when she sees Kaneda and stuff.
In this confrontation with Tetsuo, Kaneda and Kay find this like laser gun, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
The kids bring her right to it. Yeah.
Because so bullets. Because so Tetsuo can either stop bullets or just heal himself, but
heal himself from the it's not enough damage. Yeah,
but lasers are like
it's faster than light. It's faster than thought. Yeah.
So they figured they could use that, and it's kind of a cool.
I love the leading up to it though, because the Colonel's confronting Kyoko.
Classically in the movie, also.
He's like, "You're controlling the girl. Where is she?" And then it cuts to Kyoko being a creeper in her bed with her doll, and she goes, "Guns can't harm him now. We needed something more." The Colonel's like, "Something more," and then Takashi's like, "Something fast, a beam of light." And the Colonel goes, "A laser gun." And then it cuts to Tetsuo, or it cuts to Kaneda and Kay with the laser gun. I love how their prisoner uniforms have a big P on them for prison.
It just literally says P for prisoner. And they actually walk by guards later and they're like, "Hey, the Colonel needs help in there." And like all the guards are running past and they're like, and then only one of them turns around and goes, "Wait a minute. Wait. You're holding a giant laser rifle and your uniform says P on it, and it's huge. I'm pretty sure you don't play for the Pirates." How do you feel about Colonel Zadie getting his head pushed into the ground and then getting stepped on? Like a bitch.
I was here for it. I thought it was.
Oh, okay.
You're into that? Okay.
I thought it was interesting because when he's first introduced, the Colonel is pretty intimidating. He's very big. But
I mean, he's not even scared of the kids that have powers.
Well, yeah, but I think it showed that like he was the most insignificant person in that room. The little crippled children were more of a threat to Tetsuo than this big man.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just kind of like a very good display of like, I'm literally going to walk over you to get to the actual threat, which is this little bitch in this fucking crib with little bunny rabbit. Like it kind of flips it on its head. You know what I mean? I'm obsessed with Kyoko. I'm obsessed with her.
I know. I love how he shreds her giant bed and like she's still just like floating there.
Well, again, going back to like friendships, I feel like that was, if you read Tetsuo's dialogue, it sounds like Takashi and Masaru threw like a force field around her to keep her from getting killed. And I love that like teamwork aspect that they
the three of them work well together.
Yeah, he's like, like he tries to rip her apart, and then it's just her floating there, and the bed's gone. And he's like, "Oh, I get it. It's you two, isn't it?" And, you know, but so simultaneously, I love this for two reasons. Because the reason they're protecting her isn't just to save her life; it's also because she's still helping Kay and Kaneda get to where they're at. You know, like, so she's still guiding them to the building, and I'm just like, that's so fucking awesome that they're like, "Oh shit, we need her to get them here with that laser gun so they can take him out."
Well, it also shows how strong Tetsuo is because it takes the three of these experienced Esper old children to hold off just Tetsuo. Like it shows how strong he's getting, that he can overpower them basically.
Really, he's kind of the predator in this situation.
No, I think the adult nurse who's having sex with a 15-year-old is the predator still. I think even in this situation.
Oh man, I didn't even think of it that way. Because honestly, Kaneda probably lost his virginity when he was like 8. You know what I mean? Like growing up in a post-apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic world.
What a childhood!
I should have more empathy for that guy. I've been all wrong. I was wrong to judge him.
Yeah, he's the victim.
I mean, he was played upon by that school nurse that's clearly in her 20s. You know, I mean, she's drawn young, but she's definitely older.
She's also feeding him drug. Like, not only is she fucking him,
she's keeping it. She's enabling his addiction and fueling his drug selling habits as a dealer.
So the real villain of this whole series is
definitely not a victim.
Nurse. Is the school nurse?
The 15-year-old that's like, "Hey, I don't want any part of that. Can I watch it? Ha ha ha!" Like, I was just like, I mean, that's just defense. That's a defense mechanism.
Yeah. You know what? For some reason,
he's been great about it.
I didn't read it as the nurse being like a grown person. I just read it.
She must be though, because she has a job.
Yeah.
And he's a kid at high school.
So
for some reason, I made the jump that she was like an after-school intern that wanted to be like in the med school program. I created that entire narrative in my brain.
So aside from
the kindest fashion imaginable, she's at least 18 and working some sort of like college preparatory job position at the high school.
So aside from the jokes, Patrick, the way you read it is, I think, the intent of just Kaneda's like
piece of shit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's a piece of shit 15-year-old who's having sex and got to grow pregnant and doesn't care. Is what you're supposed to read.
For sure, 100%. Yeah, that was the intention. Yeah.
Okay, but so Tetsuo teleport. We talked about he confronts the kids. There's a fight. He teleports.
I just want to say one of my favorite Kaneda moments is you have this classy psychic battle, and then Kaneda shows up,
shoots a laser, jumps through a tree.
He doesn't even shoot Tetsuo with the laser from above like a sniper. He blows the window up.
He shoots the window and then jumps through a tree and then shoots at him. And only grazes his leg, and I'm like, what are you doing? Also, can you give him more warning before, like he literally screams his name at the top of his lungs, Tetsuo, and then he shoots, and you're just like, just shoot him. What are you doing?
And then so everyone else is having so Tetsuo teleports away, and everyone is like talking about something else. And then it cuts to Kaneda, and he's got the gun still, like implying that he's been blasting the rubble with the laser guns.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he goes, wait a minute, are you telling me Tetsuo's not underneath all this shit?
Yeah.
It's like he's just been blasting away while the rest of the team has
been
like
possibly one of my favorite moments.
Like they've been like formulating a plan to go after Tetsuo because they're all aware that he teleported away, and Kaneda's just in the background like blowing lasers at this fucking pile of rubble. I just thought that was very funny.
This is mildly important moment here, that this is when Kei and Kaneda like find out that Akira is a kid and one of the numbers, and number 28 or whatever, and like they kind of like learn a few details that come up later, obviously, but yeah, like to Al's point, Tetsuo teleports away, and then Kei and Kaneda are saved by this weird guy that has a grudge against the random terrorist.
Yeah, and then we already kind of hinted at this, but yeah, there's this weird subplot of like knife fight between these two dudes that like
it's like the most random. It's so fucking random. And I remember like when they reintroduced
he's so fixated on it that he helps them as fugitives escape the people that he's working for.
So they can
so they may or may not lead him to the person that he hates.
The thing is, around this knife fight, important things are happening. Like Akira is unleashed.
There's a lot of shit happening,
and
he's just like, fuck all of that. Yeah. Fuck all of that. I want to kill this one fucking guy.
Unreal.
When they escape, Kei and Kaneda meet up with Chiyoko, who is my favorite character in the entire book.
Chiyoko is pretty great.
Love her to death. And she's fantastic.
She's amazing.
Yeah, they just stop at her house to like eat, and then she's like, Kei, are you like, is this kid serious? Like, are you? And she's like, he's okay, blah, blah, blah. He's all right. I like him. Kind of thing. I don't know who this other guy is. And she's like, keep an eye on that dickhead. And she's like, I will, kind of thing. And then leave. So they really just stop in with her for like a minute. I love the scene when Ryu and his buddy that needs to get knifed by the scientist guy walk up to the military installation, and they're like, hey guys, what's going on? I noticed this is a little weird. And they're like, what's your name? They're like, oh, we got to go. See you later. And they like walk away. And you're just like, that was a weird scene. And then 5 seconds later, Tetsuo is there and just like rips them apart telekinetically. And then they walk back up and they're like, oh shit. We're late.
Well,
and it's just such a funny like disconnect.
Well, I like the Tetsuo scene too, because this is something that Otomo does a lot, but like the aftermath of violence without showing
versus showing it
is really cool, because Tetsuo arrives, everyone's like, oh, who's this kid? And the next panel is just blown up bodies.
Yeah. Just blood smears. And again, like his ability to show motion through like where a blood splatter happened and a body is slumped down beneath it, and there's like trails of blood sliding down or whatever he's trying to convey. But like you can almost see Tetsuo killing them with just the one panel of the dead bodies.
His talent like definitely goes to directing a film, right? And that's what I mean. Like if they were if they were to adapt this, I would want to see them like recreate it beat by beat because he's done all the shots for you. He's done all of the blocking.
Yeah, the story beats
but it's already done.
The pacing of this book is like, I can't say it enough. Like we kind of touched on it earlier, but the pacing of this book is fucking flawless. And like what happens between the panels is perfectly thought through, and like meaning like sometimes it's the absence of violence, like I was just saying. Sometimes it's just like, you know, they're walking over here, but now they're here, and then something explodes or something, you know, like kind of thing. Like it's just the pacing is perfect. The cutting back and forth between like what's going on with the government and the colonel, and like the scenes interspliced with like what's going on with the street gang and like where they're at on the streets and like the kids running through the city, and like it's so chopped up, but at the same time makes so much fucking sense that you feel like you're reading it in real time. Like it's not like I'm cutting away from a scene and I'm losing what's happening in, you know, like if we're with Kaneda and Kei on the street and they're trying to get Akira to safety or whatever, and then they cut to the colonel in a helicopter, you don't feel like you're like when you cut back to Kaneda, you're not missing something. Like it's so perfectly played out and thought through. It's just amazing. I can't say enough about his storytelling abilities, let alone his ability to draw everything on the planet Earth. So Tetsuo takes a very long elevator ride.
Yeah, that is wild. Because I mean, it's cool though. It was a cool way to explain. Like it took. They were like, "How much time is left in the elevator ride?" And he's like, 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Well, he's at level 35. He's at basement floor 35, like BF 35. It'll be about 15 more minutes before he hits the bottom. I'm like, holy shit!
But I know this sounds silly, but I want to point this out because it's a stupid detail, but it shows again just how this like redefined the genre.
Yeah.
But this like diagonal industrial elevator that goes down forever is like Resident Evil games have that. Final Fantasy has that. Like,
oh, that's been rubbed off many a time.
Done just all over the place in sci-fi. But I think this is I think this was the first time, or
I'm 99% sure this is the first time that's been done.
Yeah.
But again, it's just, I know it's it's a silly thing, but it's just to show how influential this is, because it like
there's the classic slide of the motorcycle that Kaneda does in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like where he slides into frame from into camera with his foot out, you know, like that. There's like a supercut of like 8,000 other animes and cartoons like mimicking that move like over and over again. And all of them are on a bike. Sometimes it's somebody sliding backwards with their fist on the ground or something. But it's like the amount of times that people have copied that shot of like the bike moving into frame and him sliding to a stop sideways is like, it's hilarious. It's like 15 minutes long. And it's like only 2-second cuts of every.
But I don't think we can't state enough just how like this is iconic.
I just feel like ideas are interesting, and it's interesting when something's out there in the world how other people will interpret it and draw different things from it.
So Akira resonates with Tetsuo. Akira's inner chamber starts heating up. They're all freaking out. The doctor gets murdered because he's obsessed with seeing it or something and stays out even though freezing cold shit is happening everywhere, or coolant is leaking everywhere, and he's getting colder and doesn't go to safety. And they're like, "We got to close the doors, Colonel." And he's like, "I don't fuck it, close them out there. I don't care." So he dies a spectacular death. Again, the hover bikes and the elevator ride down is an awesome fight scene.
It's like a video game almost. It's like
yes. You're at the level where you have to descend on this elevator, and there's going to be floating bikes that come by and try to harass you. Yeah.
Tetsuo wakes up Akira, and the Colonel's like, "Oh fuck, Akira is awake," and they have a fucking satellite called Soul with a laser beam on it, and he's like, "We gotta kill both of these motherfuckers right now."
The Soul thing, as cool as it is in the comic, that's one where I'll say the movie does it. It's so better done in the film, I think, than in the comic. When you first see the soul beam, because in the comic he says like, we're gonna go do soul, and then in the comic Tetsuo and Kaneda and Kei are all kind of above ground, and they look up in the sky, and there's kind of like a meteor looking thing falling towards them, and
it's just a beam, but it's like the end of the beam.
In the anime, it's at ground level, and there's this like glowing light around Tetsuo and Kaneda, And that light kind of gets more and more specific into like a beam, and then it just blows off Tetsuo's arm. Like it's, I think it's done cooler in the film.
I agree. Also, they fire it once. I guess they hastily fire the laser in the book, and on screen you can see like they can watch like Tetsuo like tumbling away from the explosion. They're like, "We missed." I'm like, "You fucking missed! That explosion was enormous." But like, you know, it only hit like a certain area or something, and they're like, "Well, we have to adjust. Like it's out of sync or something. We have to adjust." And he's like, "Adjust it right fucking now!" You know, that kind of thing. Like we got to hit him, kind of thing. Even before that, like it's so fun. So the army has all the laser guns. Oh, I even put the panel next to me, but they have all the laser guns. And the colonel confronts Tetsuo before he opens Akira up, and he's like, "Please don't do this. Like you're making a mistake. Like this, you're not ready for this. Like you're not ready. We can get you ready. Please, like number 41, Tetsuo. Like don't do it," kind of thing. And he's like, "Fuck, I'm gonna do it anyway." So he starts walking, and he's like, "Fuck, shoot him!" And then they literally shoot him with like 4 or 5 of the lasers, and Tetsuo just like blocks them, of course, like with some force field, and they all just like rip across Akira's jail cell essentially. And I'm just like, "You fucking idiots!" Like the doctor's like, "No, you idiot, stop!" And they're just shooting lasers like all over the fucking place. And I'm like, of course you opened it up. So it's one of those things where, I mean, Patty kind of mentioned it earlier, but like the colonel's simultaneously brilliant and sometimes stubbornly like idiotic sometimes. And it's just like hilarious how that kind of shit happens. The movie kind of encapsulates the first 2 volumes, like
sort of,
and maybe kind of like the last
kind
volume.
of like
yeah
collapses everything.
He kind of truncates like the middle section of the books into the movie, like, you know, but this fight scene is so reminiscent of the movie's ending climactic scene that it's like you get a lot of visual references to the end of the movie in this end of volume 2.
And this volume just ends with, well, so Kei and Kaneda find like a passed out Akira, because you see Shakira's number 28 on the hand. Shakira. Yep. And then it just ends with Tetsuo, like his arm is gone, and that's the end.
It's awesome. So the panel like next to you, Al, where his arm is gone, but he's still holding it up, is I fucking love that to death. Like he's psychically holding his body together, even though his hand is not there. It's like he's looking at his arm, but the rest of the arm is gone. And I'm like, fucking so goddamn brilliantly drawn. And blood is just leaking out of the top of the stump, but his hand is still being held up like it's being held up by the rest of his arm. And I fucking love that drawing to death. Like it's so good. Also, Kei and Kaneda like surviving the soul blasts. Like what the fuck?
It's your
How on earth? How on earth? There's also giant rocks crashing down to earth all around them.
Can we talk about Tetsuo's jacket, because it's kind of insane?
Oh, with the
you mean the cute little fur jacket? This guy?
Yeah,
this guy right here.
It's nuts. It's nuts. It's so nuts. This comic.
I love it because he's like, it's gonna be a little cold for me. Everyone else is like bundled up, like because they're like, oh, we're going down to like sub-zero temperatures, and he's like, just spend a jacket, a little fur collar.
my Mariah Carey jacket.
Yeah. Yeah. So the end of volume 2 is Tetsuo's arm's gone, and he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and Kei and Kaneda end up with Akira on their back, and they run off. And I think it's so funny because like they don't truly understand, I think, what they have. I mean, I think Kei sort of does, but Kaneda's just like, well, you want me to carry this kid? And I think in his brain, he's just like, I got to take care of this kid.
I don't know if either of them really knows, because like I think they know he's a government thing, obviously, but I don't think they've connected that he.
Yeah, I think they just.
Well, Kei might have some leftover memory from Kyoko's control of her. Was she?
That's true.
Maybe, but I mean, first of all, Kaneda has at least one learning disability. Let's be honest. So I don't want to get in trouble like with politically incorrect wording, but I mean, he's not all there intellectually.
Well, he's been doing speed since he was like 11.
I mean, how long has that been on drugs, man? Yeah. He might be high right now.
But anyway, all of that is to say, like, if Kaneda doesn't fully understand the dimensions of what he's dealing with, no surprise there is all.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
It's a good read. Yeah, I didn't really think about that, but you're right. Yeah. If you've never read this and you're listening to this podcast, like, yeah, it ends like that. So of course you're going to be prompted to start reading the next volume. Like the pacing is just like, it gives you a reason to want to keep reading.
I also like a macro note on that as a reader, like someone that hasn't read this, like you see this on the shelf and it's 6 like huge volumes, and they get bigger as it goes, like Harry Potter style, you know, like or giant fantasy book style. But like, so it could be a little intimidating just looking at the size of it on a shelf in a comic shop. You might just be like, oh fuck, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll start that someday, or you know, like. But I can't stress enough how much I fully endorse reading this book. It's so fantastic from start to finish, and I can't wait to keep talking about it for the next 2 episodes. But that being said, it's not daunting, and when you start reading it, it is a page turner, and it does like get you into the characters and the story like immediately. Like you would, as much as I don't want to identify with a shitbag like Kaneda in the first volume, you do, and you want him to win, and you want him to like succeed somehow. Like for what, you know, it's just so well written, it's so beautifully drawn. You know, like I can't say enough high praise for this book. Like it's so fantastic.
Sorry, I think there's like an audio problem. One of your mics set? Do you hear that kind of background that? Does this pass the Bechdel test?
Oh,
the Bechdel test. The Bechdel test. Does this pass the Bechdel test? The answer's probably no. This doesn't.
No.
This one's a no. This is you shouldn't. If you care about female representation in media, you shouldn't read this.
I agree.
Unless you count Kay possibly talking to herself, no.
If you count Kyoko taking over Kay's body as 2 women talking, then it passes the Bechdel.
Then it does.
But if you don't count it as that, it does not.
There are some Chiyoko Kay scenes in the later
that's true.
Volumes. Okay, these first 2 volumes,
the first 2 volumes.
I wouldn't read it for the female representation. These 2.
No, again, maybe 2 female characters having like a heartfelt scene between each other where they're not just talking about a dude, which inevitably everyone's talking about Akira like the entire time. So, you know, this doesn't happen. But but that's not there. But again, like there are strong, like Kyoko is an amazing character and Kay is an amazing character. So there are strong female characters in it. Just few and far between. They don't really talk to each other.
Well, we could. All right. You know? So small tangent. If you want to talk about manga as a whole, you know, the shoujo, the young girl genre, even in the 70s and 80s, did a lot of really interesting things with like gender norms, sexuality norms. You know, going back to like Lady Oscar was a cross-dressing female knight protecting Marie Antoinette. You've got the Sailor Moon stuff. Like there's a lot of really groundbreaking stuff happening on that side of manga. The shonen, like the young boy genre, was not. That's a different story. That is for young boy. It's very horny. Women are either the demure love interest that you marry or the buxom sex object that you're horny for. And those are the 2 types of women, like in shonen manga mostly. Mm-hmm. So I mean, Akira was so. I actually I don't know what type of like manga magazine Akira was published in. If it was technically like a shonen manga or not, I don't know. But it's very much like for a male, you know, the male horny audience. Mm-hmm. Early 80s is what this was written for. So I do want to say, in manga's defense, half of manga like was doing really progressive, interesting stuff with gender norms. Akira, like the boy version, was not doing any of that. It was very much just like it's about dudes and they're horny, and that's that. And unfortunately,
there's some,
like
real
Akira
sexual predatory stuff happening in later volumes.
But
I will say that the character of Chiyoko, though, which we'll talk about her later, I would say she's pretty strongly transcoded especially for a 1980s comic.
I agree.
She's very masculine. Like she's clearly a woman, but she's very like encompasses all the masculine tropes of.
She's as big as the Colonel, essentially. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But
we'll get to her.
I was making a very general note about
which I agree with that 100%. I think you're right where Akira just falls. Like, I don't know the exact genre of, I mean, obviously like cyberpunk, but I don't really know what that means 100%. Like, as far as like, I mean, it's clearly written for more of a male audience, I would think, but there are.
Oh, I think it was written exclusively for. I mean, I think it was pretty much targeted towards, teenage boys, likely, or young adult, teenage to.
If he was literally just like writing off of his own experience, I would be interested to know who Katsuhiro based Chiyoko on in his life. That'd be interesting to know. But I don't know.
But all right. To wrap all this up, first two volumes do not pass the medical test.
No, do not. They don't pass the Snyder's Zeus test either, unless you count the monster room. Well, the Colonel maybe, but you never really see the Colonel without his like.
He doesn't get shirtless or anything.
Scale. Yeah. No one.
He is shirtless in later volumes. The Colonel does not. He is not ripped.
I feel like he loses more clothes as the series goes on.
Well, I mean, he's injured a lot. He's got bandages on, but he's definitely got like a paunch. He's got like a belly.
Well, so no one. All right, so physically, no one is on the Snyder's scale. But if we take psychic powers as a form of, like, as a part of you and your body, they're strong that way.
No, you're reaching.
Yeah, it's still not. On the
scale. No, they're not on the Snyder's scale. There's no one.
So you're saying Kyoko is like an 8 on the scale if you compute her.
If we count psychic as your brain, it's part of your body. So if we count that,
no,
okay. The nobody's on the Snyder's scale. No.
I mean, they're on the scale.
No, well, there's like zero. I mean, there's 0.
They're just like a 1. Yeah, they're
really like a 0.
I really recommend.
They're old boys. They're old.
They're old
children.
babies.
They're old boys. They're not. It's a 0. They're not even a 1.
I'm not talking about the babies.
Who's
not talking about the old babies?
No one. Even like Kanada's like a wiry 15. He's not on the scale.
The gym teacher, maybe. I don't know.
The gym.
Gym did you see that hair? Yeah, he's a 1.
Let's give the gym teacher a 1. Okay.
All right. Gym teacher's a 1. He's the scale for the rest of the series. What series you want? Akira, of course.
Shakira.
I feel like I just really want to make sure the viewers and listeners understand that Kyoko is basically like the Regina George of the old boy espers. And I really need you.
They're old boys. They're old babies. There's a girl in the group.
The old babies.
Whatever. They're old souls. All right. They're old bodies and souls. They're old souls and bodies, but in young bodies.
You really need to read it in that context. I feel like I didn't do that the first time around. I kind of read her as her physical like form makes her look like she's like weak, but like she's kind of like I would compare her to the Frau Tottenkinder or whatever her name was from Fables, where it was like she's really the one that's fighting against Tetsuo the entire time, as well as the other old 19 or 18.
She's the only one that's like a real threat. I'm granted she needs the other ones, but only to a certain extent. Yes, she uses them as shields.
But
she's so stone cold, and the Colonel's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "We're trying to."
She's like, "To kill him." To kill him.
We need the laser gun. Kill Tetsuo.
She tells Tetsuo at one point, like, you shouldn't use your powers like that. So I think there's a hint in there that she and the other old boys are maybe even could do more than they let on, but they've understood that like their power is destructive and they don't want to unleash it. So I think she's even maybe stronger than is shown, but they.
So first of all, they definitely are stronger than they're shown because they're currently on the pills that we find out later are holding Tetsuo back.
Yeah,
but so clearly they could be stronger, and I think that's like an interesting note to keep in mind for later, kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, we can get into. I can be like, oh, let's and there's more to come, but like all day long. So like, that's volume 1 and 2. Again, even in reading those 2 volumes as a standalone thing, like that was just awesome in general. Like I want to talk about the next ones, and I can't wait to. But you could literally stop right there and be like, that was fantastic. I'd still recommend it if you only read volume 1 and 2. I'd still recommend it.
I mean, we've talked for 2 hours. I still feel like we've left just on these 2 volumes, we've left so much like unexplored.
When we discussed doing this, like you first said, like, what if we did 1 through 3 and 4 through 6? And I was like, no, we got to at least do 1 and 2. Like we at least need to have 3 parts kind of thing. But I mean, you're right. This could almost be a 6-part thing where we just talked about 1 volume the entire time. Like we left so much things to discuss on like the cutting room floor, so to speak, that like there's so much to say about these books. But
there's also, I feel like there's so much to say, even though we have talked about the art. Like it was so genre defining and groundbreaking. Like the visuals of this comic are even today, they're everywhere, all over media. Like any science fiction.
I think in the next 2 parts of this series, like we will definitely continue to reiterate that point and like maybe hone in more on some details about the art and stuff. But like that's gonna keep coming up in this discussion because you're right, it is groundbreaking and it's so amazing. But and the proliferation of the ideas that were put forth in this book and the movie have transcended into like so many other things. It's not even funny.
No, Katsuhiro Otomo is like straight up a genius.
Yeah.
Like period. He's a genius.
That's it.
Like a reading, I expected a lot more word bubbles of over descriptive.
No, well, Otomo is really kind of forward in that sense of like it's very much the art tells the story and the word bubbles are not so verbose and overwhelming.
It's not. If you wanted to like shred through it and not stop and appreciate the art, which is what I did, like I tore through like all 6 volumes in about 3 days. Granted, that was a Saturday and a Sunday where I basically did nothing but read it, but it's not like it's like reading Neil Gaiman's Sandman or something where there's just like
where there's like
pages
gallons of text.
It's a pretty quick read if you wanted it to be.
That being said, when there are longer conversations, it doesn't feel forced. Like there's just like it doesn't feel like an info dump. It doesn't feel forced conversation. Like it's just a genuine conversation that those characters would be having at that time. I think we did it, boys. I think we won comics. Yeah,
we did it.
Yeah, we did it.
We'll see you next time for parts 3 and 4.
Part 2.
Shakira.
I think parts 3 and 4. Yes. Part 2.
Volumes 3 and 4.
Volumes 3 and 4.
Part 2 of this series. Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good journey, nerds.
What? Why did we add nerds to it?
Fucking losers.
Oh, Jesus, Patty.